Hello, and welcome to Talk of the Town. I'm your host, Kathy Healy. On today's show, we're going to be discussing school safety. And with me here today, I have Wakefield Police Chief Rick Smith, and I also have a junior from Wakefield High School, Billy Stevens, who's going to be talking to us as well. So let's start with you, Chief, and let's just hear a little bit about your background for us before we delve into the school safety issue. Can you tell us how you became chief?
Well, first of all, thank you, Kathy, for the opportunity to be here and talk about such a hot topic in today's world. I can give you a little background. I'm a really lucky guy. I've been around a long time. I started in this business back in 1974. I didn't want to be a police officer. I wanted to be a firefighter. I come from a family of firefighters, and my goal was to follow in the legacy of my father and my uncles. But it didn't work out. And I was out on Martha's Vineyard one summer and looking for work, and I was hired as a summer police officer. And from there, I stayed on the vineyard for a while. I stayed out there 4 years full time. Then I went to Melrose, served in Melrose for 25 years, through all the ranks, became chief. 5 years there as chief, and then I was fortunate enough and blessed to be able to be hired in Wakefield 14 years ago. And I came here as chief 14 years ago. But I've had a great career. I've had an opportunity to do a lot of work, a lot of jobs, from sergeant to detective lieutenant, chief. Been at the FBI Academy, and now I serve as a vice president with the International Chiefs. And I've been lucky enough to travel around the world talking about contemporary police issues. So I'm a lucky guy.
That's terrific.
And it's an honor for me to be here.
Oh, great. And you were at the White House just recently, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that visit?
Yeah, that was quite a trip. A few members of the board of executive board for the IACP was asked to go down and speak with Jared Kushner and also the Attorney General Sessions, as well as other staffers in the White House, about gun safety and about the opioid epidemic in America today. And I had the good fortune to go down and go into the White House and actually meet the First Lady, sit down with her, some of her staff, as well as her son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and actually talk about what we're going to talk about today, some of the issues, the contemporary issues that are really plaguing our country. Right. From there, we went over and over to Justice, and we had a conversation with the Attorney General. We sat in a small room, much like this, and had a one-on-one conversation with Attorney General Sessions, and we talked about, he wanted to know really what was happening on the street. He wanted to know what was happening in our communities. And it was a great opportunity for police officers to sit down and actually let the people in Washington know what was really going on in our communities. So, and he was listening. So it was quite an opportunity.
And can you share with us what is going on in Wakefield?
Well, I'm going to start right from the beginning and say, as far as school safety goes, and I'd be interested in hearing what you have to say, but I think I can ensure our parents, our mothers and fathers, and our students and teachers that they're safe. Our schools are well protected. We practice, we drill, we talk, we share, and I think that I know that our schools are safe. Someone's going to ask, I know someone's going to ask, can you guarantee that? I can't, nobody can guarantee anything. Right. But I do think that the Wakefield Police Department, the men and women that work there, as well as the school department, have made these schools safe. And that allows our students, our children, to learn, because I believe if they're not safe and they don't feel that they're safe, they can't learn.
Not going to learn, right.
Right.
So we started with lockdown at the high school, and we went to Alice training. Can you tell us a little bit about your views on that?
Well, the Alice training, I know the Alice training is working. It's a different philosophy from Columbine when we started in 1999 with school safety and asking students and other public safety components like the fire service to help us make our schools safe. And what we've done is we've changed our tactics. From a tactical perspective, we've changed how we respond, we've changed how we go into schools, but we've also changed on what we've asked students to do. And I think Alice is more important now, where we teach students to basically to fight back.
Right.
And the sorrowful lesson we learned happened to be in Sandy Hook, when they found those students didn't practice Alice, and they found them all dead in the bathroom,
Right.
in the closet. So I think I know Alice has worked. Alice works in many different phases and many different components, but I think it works best in schools. And basically, it's fight or flight, and that is a natural response of anybody. You either fight or you flee.
Right.
And we were very lucky. The school department embraced it. The administration, the teachers, the unions, the students, parents, everybody embraced it.
Yeah.
So I feel confident that we're an Alice community, that our schools are safe.
Absolutely. Billy, how do you feel? As Billy's one of the co-founders of Wakefield High School Democrats, and he actually was one of the people that started the walkout that we had at Wakefield High about a week and a half ago. How do you feel about the difference between lockdown and Alice training? Do you feel safe at the high school?
Yeah, I do. Alice training, it gives us a way to feel like we're not waiting for something to happen, and that we can do something about our situation, and like he said, fight back if we need to. It's good to know that we have those skills kind of taught to us. It makes us feel more safe.
Good. My question to both of you is, how would you feel about cameras installed in our schools? Like, do you feel like if we had cameras, would that be effective, like Danvers High had when they had the tragedy 5 or 6 years ago with the Colleen Ritzer tragedy? They had cameras in the high school, and that helped find the killer. So I'm wondering, do you think that would be effective in our high school? Both of you, from a student's point of view and from the police point of view?
Do you want to go first, Bill?
Sure. Well, I was lucky enough to have 1 year in the new Galvin, the new building, and they had cameras installed in the hallways in that school, and it wasn't so much of a change from what it had been before. It was just you act normally. It wasn't like you felt like there were people watching all the time. You just acted like a normal student, and I don't think that adding cameras will be a big change or a big negative change for any high school student or any teacher teaching in the school, and I think that can only increase safety and security in the school.
Chief, what do you think?
Well, before we go any further, I want to commend Billy and students for 2 weeks ago when they had the walkout. It was incredibly well done, and was coordinated, and the message was loud and clear, and I really want to commend you. I was there. I saw it. You did a great job with it. Now the cameras. Everywhere we go in today's society, there are cameras. We solve a lot of crime with cameras. Everybody has a cell phone. Everybody has surveillance cameras. When we talk about cameras in schools, I think there's no downside. Now, people think that we're going to have a live feed into the police station. We don't have time to be looking at cameras all day long. We are so busy in that dispatch area that we have no interest in it. But what we want to do is have the cameras available so that if we need them, if we have a situation, we can either go back and look at them to find out what happened, or if it's a live situation, we'll be able to figure out exactly where the assailant is, isolate that, and then get in and do what we have to do very quickly, and hopefully save lives. The goal is saving lives, and that's what it's all about. We don't want to look in classrooms. We could care less. In fact, the cameras down at the Galvin have worked well for us. We don't watch them. If we need them, we go to the Galvin and we say, can we look at the video? And it helps us a lot. There's cameras, a lot of cities and towns have cameras on poles, for traffic and whatnot. The police we're not Big Brother. We don't look in that. We have enough to do, but it's an incredibly vibrant tool that we can use to keep the communities safe, and either to confirm or deny the complaint. And a lot of times it's much like body cameras on police officers. It usually helps us more than it hurts anybody. So I view it as nothing but a positive.
I'd like to add on.
Yeah.
It's like without cameras, it's the high school is seemingly a blind spot. Like you said, there are cameras everywhere, and I think the absence of cameras in the high school kind of is different from the way it is outside of the high school, and that can kind of be a blind spot to the police, for example.
Absolutely. And what about metal detectors? How do you guys both feel? How would you feel if you had to go into school and have a metal detector to go through every day? Would that make you feel safer, or?
Well, I think maybe it would make me feel safer, but it would also slow down a lot of the processes of just getting into school.
Yes.
And everyone has devices now. We have the BYOD, bring your own device to school, and I think that having to go through a metal detector will be pretty tricky, considering we have so many devices on us
Chief,
most of
do
the
you
time.
concur with that?
I'm split on that.
Okay.
I do think, I know that we do use metal detectors usually after a threat, to ensure, but it does slow down access.
Yeah.
Of course, we're using one access point now anyway,
Right.
so that changes the dynamic. But you make a great point about the fact that, there's so many devices that we carry, whether it's an iPad or a phone, that's going to trip the metal detector.
Right.
That could slow down the access to the school. But in the eyes of safety, I'd rather be late than
Right.
dead.
Right.
And if there's somebody that's coming to school, whether it's a knife or whether it's a gun, we don't want that item in the schools.
Right.
And there's no place for them in knives or guns or any weapon in school.
Right.
And we'd like to be able to grab that and stop it at the door so we don't interfere with the educational process that goes on every day.
Absolutely.
Most metal detectors today now are innocuous, and I'm sure that we could work in a way to expedite it, but again, anything that's going to keep the students safe in the school and the staff,
Yep.
I'm a fan of.
Yeah. And also, I wanted to ask about more police presence in the school. I am all for, let's get another police officer or a retired officer or retired military, and have 2 resource officers in the school. How do you feel as a student, Billy?
I don't feel like it would be a negative thing. I think that would make people feel safer, and I would feel safer if there were another police officer in schools. That's not to say that I don't feel safe with the current amount of
Yes.
police officers in the school, but having another one, I don't think it can hurt from like a student safety perspective.
Chief, what do you think?
I agree. But you know what? I would much rather, if in a perfect world, I would much rather have a full-time, fully trained, certified police officer in the school, because the job is just not security. Of the school resource officer's job is just not security.
Yeah.
It's a dynamic. It's an educational component. It's get to know the officer. It's share the intellect of the officer, and maybe do some educational pieces, and it becomes a career job for that officer. There's a lot of training that goes in. We send our officers out to specialized national training to ensure that they're at a national standard. They go out every summer for training. While we go out of school for the summer, we reassign them, but that's when they do their training, and they get their updates and everything. When you start to get into people who are either going to volunteer or going to work in a part-time basis, on a part-time basis, what happens is over time you lose them, and then you don't get the consistency. Our goal, whether it's at the Galvin or at the vocational school or right here in Wakefield High School, is consistency, and that's how I look at it. But I would love to see another officer. This is a large campus. There's a lot going on here, and I think we as a police department have a lot to offer and a lot to learn from you guys.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. And what about, there's a lot of talk about teachers having guns. What do you feel about, well, how would you feel, Billy, if your teacher had a gun?
That would make me a little uncomfortable. I think it would. If there's someone in a uniform carrying a gun, like
Right.
chief has a gun right now, I don't feel uncomfortable with that because I know he's a trained
Right,
professional
right.
who knows how to use
Yeah.
use this gun. And I think that with teachers having guns, I would feel a lot more uncomfortable, especially with the fact that they're not in uniform, they're not police officers, and that would make me uncomfortable.
I
It
know
made me
you're
very uncomfortable. And I think, Billy, you hit it right on the head.
Yeah.
There's people that know how to handle weapons, firearms, there's people that know how to shoot,
Yeah.
and then there's trained professionals.
Uh-huh.
But there's also another component that factors into this is de-escalation. And police officers, we train constantly. I mean, we're much like the military. We train all the time. And we do that for good reason. But there's also the de-escalation piece. I would rather have a trained police officer who is trained in how to de-escalate a situation, because deadly force is just that. It's deadly force. To have teachers who, that's not their job. Their job is to teach.
Right.
Their job
Right.
is to work with the students. I would feel very comfortable, very uncomfortable with a teacher sitting on the floor with a bunch of third graders with a 9mm strapped on his or her hip.
Yeah.
That's not their job.
Right.
That's our job.
Yeah.
And again, I'm a big advocate, and our department practices and works on the de-escalation.
Yeah.
And that's the beginning of firearms and firearms training, is how to de-escalate the situation, calm it down, slow it down.
Right.
But there's a lot of training in how to deal with firearms, and how to shoot, and how to defend yourself. And there's also the post-shooting piece, which people don't think about, is that once somebody gets in a situation like that, their life is changed forever. And I certainly wouldn't want to put our teachers into that role, or have our students be cast into that role either.
Right. Good point. Good point. So speaking of guns, what is your view on gun control and that such of, like, how do you feel like the age of gun access, the military assault rifle, everything?
We had this discussion in Washington, and I'm not against guns. This is America, and America loves their guns, whether that's right or wrong, okay? But I grew up in this, and the tools of the trade of firearms. As far as assault weapons, there's no room in America on the streets by any civilian to carry an assault weapon. That's manufactured for one purpose only, that's for the military, and it's used to either defend the military, it's used to kill people, okay, quite frankly. There's no room for those on the street, and they should be banned, unilaterally banned, as well as the large capacity magazines. They should be banned. There's no room for target practice with a large capacity magazine. And I'm speaking as a professional, not as a person. Mental health checks, we have got to fix the national investigative crime system. The instant criminal background check. And there's a bill right now in Washington to fix the national, background check system.
Yeah.
What we do in Massachusetts is entirely different from what they do in Idaho. So we have got to fix that, and then we have to handle and address the mental illness piece.
Right.
In 1966, there were 120 some odd million people that lived in this country, and there were 500,000 beds for the mentally ill. Fast forward to today, there's almost 400,000 people that live 400 million people that live in this country, and there's 55,000 beds.
Oh, wow.
So that tells us that we're not taking care of the mentally ill piece in America today.
Yep.
And that's a big, big piece from our perspective. The other problem that we're dealing with right now is reciprocity. The government, there's a bill in Congress that speaks to, if you have a gun license in any state, you can carry that gun in any other state. And Massachusetts is the strictest in the United States. But if this bill passes and you have a gun license in Oklahoma, and you're 14 years old, because you can carry a gun in Oklahoma at 14 years old,
Wow.
you can come here with a gun.
Oh.
That's not a good thing. That's not a good thing. We're an urban society, and we're entirely different. So, we need to address mental illness.
Yeah.
We need to address the background checks, and we certainly have to get the automatic weapons off the street. And the last piece is, I don't think anyone should be carrying a gun under 21 years old.
Yep.
And I know the argument's going to come out, well, you can go into the military at 19.
Vote. And,
But
yeah.
in the civilian world,
Yeah.
it's all about safety.
Right. So do you want to talk a little bit about what they do in Connecticut, where they go into homes of people that aren't stable, that are gun owners, and they can go right in and take guns out of the house?
Yeah, in Connecticut, it's much like our restraining orders for domestic violence, where in Connecticut, the way it works is if you have two police officers who are under the impression that somebody is mentally unbalanced, and that could be, it could be a long string of domestic violence issues or a string of mental illness events where the police feel that the person is unbalanced. They can go to court and they can get basically a restraining order, and they can enter that person's house and seize the firearms. We can't do that in Massachusetts. And what that does is that reduces the availability of the gun. One of the biggest pieces when you do that is it's reduced suicide rates in Connecticut, because when somebody's having a bad run in their life and they're mentally ill and they're not thinking right, and there's a firearm around, that's when you get an increase in suicide. And being in a business where the top killer of our employees is police suicide, you see the benefit of addressing the mental illness piece and reducing access to firearms. So what Connecticut does is actually a national model, and it's a model I'm hoping that both Congress and the individual states are going to be able to follow to reduce gun violence.
That's great. Yeah, hopefully.
I hope so.
What else do you think can be done to increase school safety in the town of Wakefield?
Well, they talk, and Bill, feel free to chime in here. They talk about target hardening. What we're doing now is reducing access to the school through one door, metal detectors, eliminating possessing weapons under 21, reducing the availability of the automatic weapon, or the AK-47, all those guns, the M4 rifles and whatnot. Those are all things that happen on the exterior. I think we have to change the mindset, and we have to get people thinking, and collectively, because we can't do it ourselves. Police just can't. We can't arrest our way out of this. We have to get a whole change in the mindset, and the mindset being safety. But as far as the buildings go, when we build buildings, they have to be hardened. You have to target harden. We have to get our teachers to buy in. We have to get people to call us when they see something suspicious. And that's the biggest thing. They can't call their friend. They can't call their selectman.
Yep.
They have to call us.
See something, say something.
And yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
See something, say something, and now, and you mentioned it earlier with Alice, do something. And that is big. Most of the school shootings that we've had, and most of the horrific events like the Pulse nightclub down in Florida, the movie theater out in Colorado, in Aurora, Colorado, people saw something. They just didn't say something, and they just didn't do something. And that is incredibly important to make in our society. And our schools are nothing more than a microcosm of our society. That's how we make it safer.
I think what he was saying about the single access, that I see it changing as a student in the school. I see it changing. There's more emphasis on not letting anyone in through not like either like the main door. Even if it's like your best friend, just because if you let one person in, then more people will be let in. And I see it changing, that it's becoming stricter and stricter, and that's a good thing, that we are becoming more strict with who we let into the building, where we let them in, and when we let them in.
We also have administrators at every door in the morning. I don't know if you noticed, even behind in the field house, we have administrators at every door now. So hopefully it'll make students feel safer, and parents, when they're dropping off kids, feel safer when they enter the building. What about bulletproof backpacks? There's a guy in Midwest or someplace that developed bulletproof backpacks. How would you feel wearing a bulletproof backpack?
Well, I don't think about my backpack too much, but I think, I think if I had a bulletproof backpack, I might feel safer, but then I wouldn't think about it most of the time. I would just go about my day like it was a regular day. I don't think I would think about it all the time. But if something were to happen, I think that might make me feel a lot safer.
Yeah. Chief?
Is that what we've come to?
Yeah, I know.
Where our students have to wear body armor?
I
And that's
know.
basically what we're talking about. I've come from the days when I started law enforcement, there was nothing, you never heard of body armor. And now we're mandatory where our officers have to wear body armor every day. Wow. That's a statement on society. It troubles me to think that our students have to have ballistic vests or body armor or backpacks to come to school. I think I get it and I understand it, but my take on it is let's do it on the front end and let's make the school safer on the front end so you don't have to carry. If the day that you have to wear body armor to school, I think it's the day we really have to pull back and start to think about things. I just want to clarify one thing though, Kathy. When I said about guns in 21,
Yeah.
I mean to buy guns.
Oh, okay.
I want to make that perfectly clear. There's a lot of people in this country, in this state that hunt, that,
Yeah.
hunting's a sport, and they have every right to possess. I just think for an individual to independently, without a parent signing off, to buy a gun under 21. I mean, if you want to hunt with your mother or your father or whatever it is, and you're 16 years old, that's a right that's afforded, and
Right.
that's a controlled environment, as opposed to
Right.
you walking into a gun store at 19 and buying
Yeah.
yourself a handgun.
Yeah.
That's a little bit different. but-
Right, right.
So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah,
'cause,
thank you, thank you. Is there anything else you want to add in closing?
No, I mean, I don't feel uncomfortable going to school, and I
Good.
think that's very important, especially with the way that things are going now. I feel safe in my school. It's nice to see our SROs around school, and I know that our administration is working really hard to maintain a safe environment along with the
Yep.
town
Yep.
police.
Chief, anything you want to say in closing?
No, I agree. This has been a great opportunity to sit and have a conversation about this, and I truly believe that the schools in Wakefield are safe, and that our students are getting a great educational opportunity. We're in a transition period now with the new superintendent of schools.
Yep.
I will say that I sat on the transition committee, on the selection committee, so the school safety was an issue that we talked about. And it's good to have that conversation, because if we're talking about it, we're thinking about it, and then, not only do our teachers and our students feeling safe, but our parents, your parents also understand
Right.
that we're working really hard to make our schools safe, and so our students will be the best they can be at whatever they do, and have a career path and choose the path that they want to go on.
Great, great. Well, Billy Stevens, thank you very much for being on the show. I appreciate
Thank
your
you.
time. And Chief, thank you very much for your years of service to Wakefield
Thank you.
and for coming on the
Welcome.
show today. I really appreciate it.
Thank
It was
you.
a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching Talk of the Town.